Noah's weight was too much for Tate's little frame, refusing to drag Noah's body out of the hole. Tate's entire body shook with effort. He was crying as he pulled harder, his pajamas becoming covered in dirt. "Come on, Noah," he sobbed. "Please wake up." Tate looks up to the top of the hole. Why is he not waking up? Noah watched in horror and heartbreak as the little boy refused to stop. Tate wiped his tears with one hand, then grabbed Noah again with the other. He was trembling. His arms were too small. His strength wasn't enough. But he kept trying. Again and again, little Tate pulled, cried, and struggled to move Noah out of the hole. Finally, with one last desperate effort, Tate managed to drag Noah's small body closer to the edge. The child collapsed for a moment, breathing hard, his face wet with tears. Then he got back up. He kept dragging Noah behind him. Noah couldn't move. He couldn't speak. He could only watch the little boy who had always tried to protect him fight against something far bigger than himself. Then Noah noticed something that made his heart sink. This wasn't Tate's backyard. The ground, the trees, the darkness surrounding them, it wasn't anywhere he remembered. This wasn't the Blue Mansion. This wasn't a childhood place he knew. This was somewhere else. Noah looked from his unconscious 4-year-old self to the little boy in Scooby-Doo pajamas crying as he tried to save him. And a terrifying thought settled over him. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a memory. It was something Tate had carried alone for a very long time. Noah opened his eyes again. For a moment he expected darkness. He expected the dirt, the cold air, and the impossible sight of himself as a child lying unconscious in a hole. But this time was different. The sun was shining. Bright, warm, and almost painfully beautiful. Noah slowly pushed himself up and looked around. He wasn't trapped in some forgotten grave of memories. The hole beneath him looked completely different. It wasn't deep or terrifying. It was small, only about 4 feet deep with soft dirt along the sides. Near him sat a little kid's shovel. Noah stared at it. A child's shovel. A toy left behind in a place that somehow felt like a memory. "What is this?" Noah whispered. He looked up. Standing at the edge of the hole was Tate. But not the Tate he knew now. A 15-year-old Tate look-alike boy. Noah felt his breath catch. The teenager looked down at him with a mixture of annoyance and amusement. "Tatum, will you get out of the hole?" Noah blinked. The name sounded ridiculous and familiar at the same time. He had heard Tate's family tease him with names like that when they were younger. Tate. But the little boy didn't answer. Noah looked down into the hole. And his heart nearly stopped. There was another child down there. 5-year-old Tate. He was lying flat on his back, his arms crossed over his chest, perfectly still in the same position as the lifeless 4-year-old Noah had been in an earlier part of his dream. Playing dead. Noah stared. Even knowing it was a dream, even knowing it wasn't real, seeing a young Tate pretending to be dead sent an uncomfortable chill through him. The boy closed his eyes dramatically. "I am dead." "Tate Blue is dead," little Tate announced. Noah couldn't help staring. This was Tate. The same Tate who had carried impossible emotions, hidden pain, and memories he couldn't explain. And here he was, just a child playing pretend. "Tatum Joseph Cornelius Blue," a teenage Uncle Joey yelled from above. Noah looked up. Uncle Joey stood at the edge of the hole. He looked exactly as Noah remembered him, just 15. Warm. Loud. Playful. "Would you get out of that hole?" Joey called down. "The teacher-parent conference at kindergarten is over and your parents want you up here." Little Tate didn't move. Joey put his hands on his hips. "Do not ignore me, young man. I don't want to have to lean my favorite nephew over my leg and spank you." Tate giggled uncontrollably. Noah watched the scene unfold, frozen between sadness and disbelief. This wasn't the frightening Tate from his nightmares. This was a child. A child who thought pretending to be dead was the most important thing in the world. Little Tate opened one eye. "Tate Blue is dead," he said seriously. Joey raised an eyebrow. Tate explained. "I'm really dead." Noah almost smiled despite himself. It was so completely Tate. Dramatic. Theatrical. Determined to stay in character. Joey sighed and climbed down into the hole. Come on, Totem, time to leave the imaginary cemetery. He reached down and helped the little boy stand. Your mother is waiting for you. Little Tate finally allowed himself to be pulled up. Joey climbed out first, then turned around and lifted Tate out. At the top of the hole stood Talia. She looked down confused. What is he doing down there? Joey shook his head. My nephew is a bit of a drama princess. He dug a hole so he could play dead in it. Noah watched Tate's face carefully. Even as a little boy, he looked embarrassed at being called out. Tate jumped back into the hole, giggling. Will you get out of the hole? Joey asked. Can't, Tate replied. Joey stared at him. Why not? I'm playing. Playing what? Little Tate looked completely serious. Dead. Noah felt his chest tighten. The words sounded different now. He knew it was just a child's game. He knew Tate was pretending. But hearing him say it brought back every strange memory, every moment where Tate seemed to disappear into himself. Joey frowned. You were acting like a corpse. No, Tate corrected. He looked up proudly. I was a dead Noe. Noah froze. The dream seemed to go silent around him. Little Tate continued. I was playing dead as Noah does. Joey's expression changed. The humor disappeared. For the first time, Noah saw disgust, horror, and concern cross Joey's face. Tate. The little boy climbed out of the hole and then looked up at Joey. Go to the car, Totem. But now. Noah stood silently, watching the scene in front of him. Because even in a simple childhood memory, even in a sunny field outside a kindergarten building, Tate had been trying to understand him. Trying to imitate him. Trying to become someone he cared about. And Noah couldn't stop wondering why. The look on Joey's face stayed with Noah. The little boy's words should have sounded innocent. A child pretending. A game. A dramatic imagination running wild. But Noah couldn't ignore the way Joey reacted. The humor disappeared from his uncle's face the moment Tate said those words. I was Noah. Adult Noah watched the memory unfold, standing unseen as a witness to something that suddenly felt much heavier than a child's game. Because Joey didn't look annoyed anymore. He looked concerned. Not confused. Not amused. Concerned. Noah's chest tightened. The longer he watched, the more he felt like something about the scene wasn't adding up. Tate wasn't just playing dead. Not really. It looked almost as though he was recreating something he had seen before. Something he didn't fully understand. Something that had become familiar enough that he could turn it into a game. Noah looked at the 5-year-old version of Tate walking toward the car. The little boy wasn't laughing. He wasn't running around pretending to be a mummy anymore. He looked thoughtful. Like he was trying to explain something in the only way a child knew how. Noah swallowed. Why were you playing me? He whispered. The dream didn't answer. The sunny kindergarten lawn suddenly felt different. The bright colors, the laughter in the distance, the ordinary childhood scene, it all seemed like a cover over something deeper. Noah remembered being young. He remembered Tate copying him sometimes. The way Tate watched him. The way Tate noticed things other people missed. But this felt different. This felt like a child taking something painful and turning it into a story because he didn't have the words to explain it. Noah looked back at Joey. Even in the memory, Joey seemed to sense something was wrong. He wasn't angry because Tate was playing. He was worried because Tate's choice of game meant something. And adult Noah felt a chill run through him. Maybe Tate hadn't been pretending. Maybe he had been remembering. Noah blinked. The kindergarten lawn disappeared. The warm sunlight faded away, replaced by the familiar feeling of standing somewhere he hadn't been in years. He looked around. He was standing at the entrance to Tate's neighborhood. For a moment Noah simply stared. This was supposed to be the place he remembered. The beautiful yellow sign with black letters that welcomed everyone into the community. The flowers that surrounded the sign, carefully planted and always blooming. The entrance that once felt warm and inviting. But now it was different. The yellow sign had turned black. The lettering was faded and difficult to read. The flowers surrounding it were no longer bright and alive. They were dead. Rotten. Their stems were bent and lifeless, the petals gone, leaving only the remains of what had once been beautiful. Noah felt a chill move through him. This wasn't how he remembered Child Ridge Acres. This wasn't the neighborhood filled with childhood memories. The street was dark. The houses sat silently behind closed windows. The familiar road leading to 1169 Caspar Sebastian Avenue stretched ahead, but it looked like a place that had been abandoned by time. Noah slowly walked forward. His heart tightened as he recognized the street. 1169 Caspar Sebastian Avenue. Tate's home. The place that had been his home away from home. The place where he had spent countless hours as a child. The place where so many memories of Tate had been created. But standing there now, in the darkness, it felt like he was seeing the neighborhood for the first time. Like something underneath, the memories had finally been revealed. Noah looked down the empty street. And for the first time, he wondered if he had spent years remembering only the parts of Tate's childhood that were easiest to hold onto. Maybe the dreams were leading him somewhere. Maybe they were showing him the pieces he had never been able to see. Noah opened his eyes again. The darkness shifted. The ruined neighborhood disappeared. For a moment, he stood completely still, trying to understand where he was now. He was no longer standing on the street. He was standing in front of a house. A mansion. Noah slowly looked up. It was enormous. The architecture was unfamiliar, the shape of the building different from any home he remembered. The windows were tall and imposing, the front entrance wide and intimidating. But something felt wrong. This wasn't the mansion he had grown up in with Tate. Noah knew that house. He knew every hallway, every staircase, every room. This place was different. He looked around, searching for something familiar. Nothing. Then his eyes landed on the address. His stomach tightened. The numbers weren't right. The street wasn't right. This wasn't any place Noah remembered visiting. The plaque beside the door read, 222 M. Timber Ridge Ave. New York City. Noah stared at it. New York City. The words felt impossible. He stepped back, looking at the mansion again. Why was he here? Why was his mind showing him places he had never been? The front door stood silently in front of him. Waiting. Noah reached toward the handle but stopped. Every place the dream had taken him had been connected to Tate somehow. The childhood bedroom. The hole. The neighborhood. Now this mansion. A place that didn't belong to his memories. A place that felt like it was asking him to remember something he had never known. Noah looked around the mansion, still trying to understand why this place felt so unfamiliar. Then he noticed something he hadn't seen before. Birthday decorations. The mansion was filled with the remains of a birthday celebration. Streamers still hung from the walls. A few balloons floated near the ceiling. Wrapping paper and toys were scattered around the room. In the middle of it all sat Tate. 2 years old. He was on the floor surrounded by his new birthday toys, completely lost in his own little world. Noah couldn't look away. Seeing Tate this young felt impossible. This was a version of Tate he had never known. A little boy before the arguments, before the pain, before all the complicated emotions that would come years later. Uncle Joey sat comfortably on the couch with a camera in his hands, smiling as he took pictures. The flash went off again and again. Look at me, Joey said warmly. Little Tate didn't even notice. He was too focused on his toys. Across the room, Tim sat reading the newspaper. Every so often, he lowered it and looked over at Tate with a smile on his face. Noah noticed that. Tim wasn't just watching. He looked happy. Terrence stood nearby, his attention fixed on his son. Little Tate kept taking 2 of his toys and hitting them together, making them crash as if they were fighting. Bang! Bang! Terrence watched quietly. Noah studied the expression on his face, trying to understand what he was seeing. For this brief moment, Terrence looked like a father watching his child play. Linus sat nearby, eating birthday cake, enjoying the quiet after the celebration. In the corner of the room sat 3 male cousins Noah had never met before. They watched the little birthday boy from a distance, talking quietly among themselves. Tate's grandparents stood nearby with their camera, capturing pictures of the day. The room felt like a family frozen in time. Then footsteps came from upstairs. Talia appeared. She looked around the room, and Noah immediately understood. The party was over. The guests had already left. Only the family remained. Talia picked up her purse. "I'm going shopping," she said. Everyone looked toward her. "It's only 8 o'clock, I'll be back in 3 hours." She glanced toward Terrence. "I'm taking your mother with me," she said. "She's going to buy some furniture for the guest house." She adjusted her coat. "Watch over Tate while I'm gone, let him watch some television." A few moments later, both women walked out the front door. The house became quiet. Noah turned his attention back to the living room. Little Tate hadn't moved. He was still sitting on the floor. Still playing. He picked up 2 small army men and pushed them together, making them fight. The little figures collided over and over. A tiny battle only Tate could see. Noah watched him. A strange sadness settled over him. Because he was looking at a child who was still years away from meeting him. A child who had an entire life before Noah ever became part of it. And yet somehow here Noah was. Watching. Remembering something that wasn't his memory. Noah continued watching. The thing that struck him the most was how normal Tate seemed. Just a child. A happy little boy with no worries. There were no tantrums. No screaming. No breaking things. No desperate need to be the center of attention. No stomping his foot and demanding, "Pay attention to me now." Noah almost found himself surprised by how ordinary the moment felt. Little Tate wasn't difficult. He wasn't dramatic. He was just a toddler enjoying his birthday. The 2-year-old eventually pushed himself up from the floor and toddled across the room. Noah watched as Tate walked over to Uncle Joey and grabbed onto his pant leg. Joey looked down. The 12-year-old smiled. "Hey there." He bent down and gently tapped his nephew on the nose. "Boop." Tate burst into laughter. The sound filled the room. Joey laughed too as he picked him up and placed him on his lap. For a moment Noah simply watched. Tate was happy. Safe. Loved. He watched Joey hold the little boy like he was the most important thing in the world. The scene changed slowly. Time passed. The birthday celebration was long over. Later that night around 11 o'clock, Talia returned home. The mansion was quiet. The toys Tate had been playing with earlier were still scattered across the floor exactly where he had left them. The birthday excitement was gone. The guests were gone. The laughter had faded. Terrence was sitting in the kitchen drinking a beer. All the other men had left. Talia looked around. "Where's Tate?" Terrence glanced toward the stairs. "He's upstairs asleep." Talia smiled faintly. "Already?" Terrence shrugged. "He threw some toys earlier, so I put him to bed early." Noah watched closely. The words caught his attention. Thrown toys. That didn't match what he had seen. The little boy from earlier had been calm. Happy. Playing. Talia didn't seem worried. "Well, I hope the little whippersnapper had a wonderful birthday," she said. She smiled. "Isn't he a sweet child?" Terrence looked toward the stairs. For a moment he smiled. "Yeah." Noah stared at the scene. A simple moment. A family. A child. A birthday. But something about it felt incomplete. Like there was a missing piece Noah couldn't see. Then a sound interrupted everything. A bird is chirping outside. The noise grew louder. The mansion faded away. The birthday decorations disappeared. The voices vanished. Noah opened his eyes. He sat up suddenly. He was back in his green Rambler. Morning light filtered through the windows. For a moment he didn't move. He just sat there trying to understand what he had seen. A dream. A memory. A story. He didn't know anymore. But one thing stayed with him. The image of 2-year-old Tate. Not the Tate everyone remembered. Just a little boy playing on the floor, laughing in Uncle Joey's arms. Noah drove to the Blue Mansion later that day. The familiar house came into view, bringing with it a strange mixture of comfort and unease. So many memories lived within those walls: childhood afternoons, family dinners, moments with Tate that Noah could still remember as clearly as if they had happened yesterday. When Talia opened the door, she smiled warmly. Noah. He hugged her. She had always been more than just Tate's mother to him. She had been his surrogate mother too, the person who welcomed him into their family when he was just a child. They sat together in the living room, and Noah finally told her everything. The dream. The memories. The strange places his mind had taken him. The house in New York City. The birthday party. The little boy version of Tate. Talia listened carefully, not laughing or dismissing him. After he finished, she was quiet for a moment. That house in New York, she finally said, was where Tate was born. Noah looked up. It was. She nodded. Yes, we lived there until we moved to Los Angeles. We sold the house a few months after Tate's 4th birthday. Noah sat back processing that. The dream suddenly felt different. That mansion hadn't been random. It had been real. Talia smiled softly, trying to lighten the mood. Would you like to watch some home movies? Noah laughed. Actually, yes. He glanced around the room. Then he noticed something. What's all of that? Talia smiled and walked over to a collection of old recordings. These are videos from each of the birthdays Tate celebrated. She pointed to another stack. And over there are the ones from your birthdays. Noah stared. There were so many. Tate wanted copies of everything. Talia shook her head with a small laugh. When he was 18, he made duplicates of everything, every birthday video, every recording. Why? She smiled. I was surprised too. I didn't think he really cared about things like that. She picked up one of the cases. He just said he wanted them for old time's sake. Noah looked at the enormous collection. How many are there? At least 1,000 videos, Talia said. Noah blinked. 1,000. She laughed softly. Joey loved taking pictures and recording everything. Noah smiled. With that much footage, I'm surprised he didn't become a filmmaker. Talia shook her head. Tate never really liked photography. Noah looked back at the videos. That seemed strange. Someone who didn't like photography had saved every moment. Every birthday. Every memory. Every piece of the past. And Noah couldn't stop thinking about what Tate had told him in the dream. You finally remembered. Maybe Tate hadn't cared about the videos because he loved cameras. Maybe he cared because he was afraid of losing the moments captured inside them. Talia carefully selected one of the recordings. This one is Tate's 15th birthday, she said. She placed the film into the old movie reel player, and the room filled with the soft clicking sound of the projector. Noah leaned forward. The screen flickered. Then the past appeared. A teenage Noah was standing in the hallway. And immediately Noah laughed. There he was, awkward, energetic, completely unembarrassed. He was dancing like a complete fool. His arms moved dramatically, his feet sliding across the floor as if he thought he was performing on a stage. From behind the camera came Tate's laughter. Real laughter. The kind Noah hadn't heard in years. The older Noah watched the younger version of Tate laughing and felt something tighten in his chest. He missed that version of Tate. The Tate who laughed easily. The Tate who didn't seem weighed down by everything he carried later in life. On the recording, Noah stopped dancing and started talking. Okay, I'm hungry. Tate laughed from behind the camera. No, you were just eating. I need a sandwich. A sandwich. Yes, a very important sandwich. The younger Noah continued explaining his sandwich plans with complete seriousness, making Tate laugh even harder. The older Noah smiled. He remembered that. The little moments. The ridiculous conversations that didn't matter but somehow meant everything. On the recording, Noah started walking toward the stairs. I'm going downstairs to make a sandwich. Tate smiled. I'm taking a shower. Noah shook his head, smiling. Fine, I'll be back. The camera moved closer as Tate playfully nudged him toward the stairs. The two of them laughed. Do you want a sandwich? Noah called. I'll be fine, Tate answered. I'm just a few moments. The camera followed Noah downstairs. The hallway came into view. The house was beginning to fill with people. Guests were arriving. The birthday celebration was starting. Noah watched silently. The recording captured a version of life that felt impossible to get back. A 15-year-old Tate. A teenage Noah. A house full of people. A moment before everything became complicated. Talia glanced over at Noah. You remember this day? Noah didn't answer right away. He just watched the screen. Because he wasn't only watching a birthday video. He was watching a version of Tate he had spent years trying to find again. The reel slowly came to an end. The clicking sound of the projector filled the room for a few seconds before the screen went dark. Noah remained sitting there, staring at the blank wall. The memory of the recording stayed with him. The laughter. The jokes. The way Tate had seemed so carefree. Then Noah quietly spoke. I remember that day. Talia looked over. What do you mean? Noah swallowed. I remember Tate had a seizure in the shower. The words changed the atmosphere in the room. Talia's expression softened. She didn't immediately answer. She looked back at the projector, then at the stack of recordings. So much happened in those years, she said quietly. Noah nodded. He knew. The strange thing wasn't just remembering the event. It was seeing the person Tate had been before it. The boys laughing behind the camera. The boy who wanted to capture every moment. The boy who seemed so different from the person Noah had spent years trying to understand. Talia reached over and gently touched his shoulder. If you want, you can stay up here for a few hours. Noah looked at her. I'm not going shopping today anyway, I'll be around until 6. He gave a small smile. Take your time. Noah thanked her. After Talia left the room, Noah stayed. The afternoon passed slowly. One by one he watched the home videos. Birthday parties. Family gatherings. Holiday celebrations. Moments he remembered. Moments he didn't. He watched Tate grow up through the eyes of a camera. He saw a little boy running through the house. A child laughing with Uncle Joey. A teenager was joking with him in the hallway. A young man who seemed to always want proof that those moments had happened. By the time the afternoon light began fading through the windows, Noah was surrounded by recordings. Thousands of memories. Thousands of pieces of Tate's life. And Noah couldn't stop thinking about the dreams. Because the videos showed the moments everyone remembered. But the dreams seemed to be showing him the moments nobody talked about. February 1996 arrived. Talia organized a family dinner on a Friday evening at the Blue Mansion. The house was filled with familiar sounds, the clinking of dishes, voices drifting through the rooms, and the quiet movement of family members preparing for another gathering. For everyone else, it was a normal night. But Noah couldn't stop thinking about the dream. The Wendigo. The creature standing beside Tate. The fear in Tate's eyes. The image refused to leave him. Even while he sat at the table, listening to conversations around him, part of his mind was somewhere else. He kept seeing 15-year-old Tate standing in the darkness. He kept remembering how the monster had looked at him. How Tate had looked at it. Noah had spent years believing he understood Tate. He knew his habits. His fears. His moods. The way he acted when he was upset. But the dream had shown him something different. Something buried. Something Tate had never talked about. Noah looked across the room toward Tate. There he was. Older now. Alive. Real. Not the distorted figure from the nightmare. Not the frightened child standing beside a monster. Just Tate. But Noah couldn't forget the fear on his face. The fear of something that seemed to have followed him for years. Talia noticed Noah was unusually quiet. You seem distracted, she said gently. Noah forced a small smile. I'm fine. But he wasn't. Because the more he tried to dismiss the dream, the stronger the memory became. The Wendigo wasn't just a monster from a nightmare. In the dream, it represented something. Something connected to Tate. Something Noah still didn't understand. And sitting there at the family dinner, surrounded by people who loved Tate, Noah couldn't shake the feeling that there was a story hidden beneath the surface. A story nobody had ever told him. Noah excused himself from the dinner table and walked into the kitchen. The smell of fresh bread filled the room. He opened the oven and carefully pulled out the basket of warm rolls, the steam rising as he reached for the butter. For a moment, everything felt normal. A family dinner. The Blue Mansion. the familiar comfort of a place he had known for years. Then Noah looked up and froze. Standing near the bay windows was Tate. Not the Tate sitting at the dinner table. Not the adult Tate he had come to know. A 14-year-old Tate. Noah's heart nearly stopped. Ever since the dreams had started, he kept seeing him everywhere. 14-year-old Tate. The version of him that existed in those strange memories. The boy from the nightmare. The boy standing beside the Wendigo. The boy whose face had changed in ways Noah still couldn't explain. Noah gripped the counter, staring. For a moment he wondered if he was trapped inside another dream. Then the teenager turned around. He looked completely normal. Not the distorted figure from the nightmare. Not the terrifying image Noah had seen before. Just Tate. 14 years old. Familiar. Young. The same boy Noah remembered from that time in their lives. A small smile appeared on Tate's face. Hey Noe. Noah went still. That nickname. The way Tate said it. It was exactly how he remembered. Noah looked around the kitchen. The sounds of the family dinner continued behind him. Voices. Laughter. The clinking of dishes. Everything was real. Everything except the 14-year-old boy standing by the window. Noah swallowed. Tate. The teenager tilted his head slightly. The same expression Noah had seen countless times when Tate was trying to hide what he was feeling. Noah felt a chill. Because the strangest part wasn't that he was seeing 14-year-old Tate again. It was that Tate looked at him like nothing was unusual. Like Noah was the one who had arrived late to a conversation that had already begun. Noah stood frozen in the kitchen. The 14-year-old Tate remained by the bay windows, looking exactly as he had in Noah's memories. But something about the moment felt different. The room around them continued as normal. The sounds of the family dinner drifted in from the other room. People laughed. Plates moved. Conversations continued. Yet Noah felt like he was standing in a separate world. Then the figure moved. The phantom version of Tate slowly walked toward him. Noah's body tensed. This wasn't the same terrifying image from the dream. This wasn't the decomposing version. This was the boy Noah remembered. The teenager who had once been his closest buddy. The phantom stopped in front of him and looked up at Noah with a confused expression. You don't seem to be very friendly, Tate said softly. His voice sounded exactly the same. The same warmth. The same familiarity. Did I do something, Noe? Noah couldn't answer. He stared at him, caught between memories and reality. The nickname hit him harder than he expected. Noe. A name from years ago. A name that belonged to a time before everything became complicated. Tate slowly lifted his hand. Noah stayed still as the phantom gently touched his cheek. The gesture was familiar. Almost comforting. You look scared of me, Tate whispered. Noah swallowed. Because that was the truth. Not because of this Tate. Not because of the boy standing in front of him. But because Noah had seen what was hidden underneath. The nightmare. The monster. The fear. And now he was looking at the same person who had been at the center of it all. Noah finally found his voice. Tate. The phantom smiled sadly. I've been trying to show you something. Noah's heart tightened. What? The teenager looked toward the kitchen window, where the reflection showed only the two of them. Something you forgot. Noah stared at him. And for the first time, he wondered if these visions weren't haunting him. Maybe they were asking him to remember. When are you going to wake up? Tate's voice was quiet. Noah stared at him, confused. The words didn't make sense. The kitchen around him was still there. The sounds of the family dinner still drifted through the mansion. The warm lights, the smell of food, the familiar walls, all of it felt real. But Tate looked at him like he was the one who was lost. The blonde slowly looked up. What? Tate tilted his head slightly. I said, when are you going to wake up? Noah felt a chill run through him. Wake up. The 14-year-old Tate nodded. Yes, Noe. Noah looked around the kitchen again, searching for something that proved this was real. I am awake. Tate's expression softened. No. The answer was gentle. Almost sad. Noah stared at him. What do you mean no? Tate stepped closer. You keep looking for answers in places that aren't there. Noah's heart started beating faster. The dreams. The memories. The mansion. The Wendigo. The photographs. All of it rushed through his mind at once. What is this? Noah whispered. Tate looked at him with an expression Noah couldn't understand. It depends. On what? On whether you're ready to see it. Noah felt his throat tighten. The boy in front of him wasn't angry. See what? Tate wasn't trying to frighten him. He looked almost like he was waiting. Waiting for Noah to finally understand. Noe. Tate reached out again. You've been searching for me for a long time. Noah looked at the 14-year-old version of the person he had spent his life trying to understand. And now you're asking me to wake up. The young Tate walked over to the kitchen counter. Noah watched him carefully. There was something different about him now. The 14-year-old boy who had appeared so casually moments before no longer looked like just a memory. He looked like he was trying to communicate something. Tate reached into a drawer and pulled out a piece of construction paper. Noah frowned. What are you doing? Tate didn't answer. He picked up a black ink pen and slowly began writing. The room became quiet. Noah watched the letters appear on the paper. At first he thought he would recognize the message. The writing was made from English letters. Normal letters. The kind Noah knew. But when Tate finished and held the paper up, Noah realized something was wrong. It wasn't a word. It wasn't a name. It wasn't anything that existed in the English language. The letters were arranged together in a way that looked almost like a word, but there was no meaning Noah could understand. It was something invented. Something that looked like it should have a definition, but didn't. Tate walked over to the mirror in the kitchen and held the construction paper up so the reflection could see it. Noah stepped closer. He studied the strange combination of letters. He tried to sound it out. Nothing. He tried to recognize a pattern. Nothing. It was as if Tate had written a word from a language that used English letters but belonged to somewhere else entirely. Tate. Noah looked at the teenager's reflection. What does that mean? Tate didn't answer. He only stared back through the mirror. The expression on his face was serious. Almost like he was waiting for Noah to figure it out. The impossible word remained written in black ink. A message Noah could see. A message Tate wanted him to notice. But a message that didn't exist anywhere except in this strange place between memory and dreams. I don't understand, Noah said. He stared at the construction paper in Tate's hands. Play. It's not a word. Noah stepped closer, studying the strange letters again. They're English vowels, he said slowly. They're letters I recognize, but they don't make an English word, they don't mean anything. The phantom that looked like Tate smiled. Not a cruel smile. A knowing one. Stop looking in the mirror. Noah looked confused. What? Tate pointed toward the reflection. As long as you look in the mirror, everything you see will be backwards. Noah frowned. I don't understand what you're saying. The phantom looked at him again. Stop looking in the mirror. Noah glanced between Tate and the glass. What do you mean, looking in the mirrors? The phantom stepped closer. The way you go through your life. He paused. You're looking through a mirror. Noah remained silent. Tate continued. You see everything reflected back at you. You think you're seeing the truth, but you're seeing a reflection. A clever deception, the one you're allowed to see. Noah's expression changed. A reflection. Yes, a mirror image. You, Noah, are a reflection of hell. The phantom pointed at the glass. When you look in a mirror, left becomes right, right becomes left. Everything is reversed, but your brain accepts it because you've seen it your whole life. Noah stared at him. And you're saying I've been doing that? Tate nodded. You've been looking at everything backwards and thinking it's right side up. The words settled heavily. Noah looked away from the mirror for the first time. The kitchen suddenly felt different. The family dinner. The memories. The dreams. The versions of Tate he had seen. Everything he thought he understood felt uncertain. You need to stop looking through the mirror, Tate whispered. Because if you keep doing it. The phantom's voice became softer. You'll believe the reflection is the real thing and stay asleep forever. Noah looked back at the 14-year-old Tate. For a moment, he didn't see a ghost. He didn't see a phantom. He saw a scared kid trying to explain something that he had never been able to put into words. "What am I supposed to see instead?" Noah asked. Tate looked toward the window. "The truth, everything you were afraid to look at." The phantom turned away from the mirror and faced Noah. For a moment, Noah thought the strange message on the construction paper had disappeared. Then Tate lifted it again. He held the paper up in front of him, away from the mirror. Noah stared. His heart began to race. The strange letters were gone. The meaningless symbols that had looked like English letters but formed no word were no longer there. Instead, the message was clear. Simple. 2 words. Noah's breath caught. "Help me." Noah stepped closer. "No." His voice was barely a whisper. The words had been there the entire time. Not hidden. Not erased. Just unreadable while Noah was looking at the reflection. The phantom that looked like Tate watched him quietly. Noah looked from the paper to the teenager standing in front of him. "You were trying to tell me this." Tate didn't answer right away. His expression changed. The sadness Noah had seen before returned. "I tried." Noah swallowed. "Why couldn't I read it?" Tate looked toward the mirror. "Because you were looking at the reflection." Noah stared at the words again. "Help me." 2 words that had been right in front of him. 2 words he couldn't see until he stopped looking through the mirror. The kitchen suddenly felt colder. The family dinner happening beyond the doorway seemed far away. Noah looked at the 14-year-old version of Tate. The boy who had appeared in his dreams. The boy who had shown him monsters, memories, and things he didn't understand. "Tate." His voice broke slightly. "Who are you asking me to help you from?" The phantom looked toward the darkness beyond the kitchen. And for the first time, Noah saw something he hadn't seen before. Not fear. Not confusion. Hope. "That's what I've been trying to show you." The phantom leaned forward. Noah felt the air grow heavier as Tate's voice lowered into a whisper beside his ear. "Everything is backwards." Noah turned toward him confused. "Everything." The phantom slowly nodded. "Everything." Noah stared at the 14-year-old version of Tate. "What does that mean?" Tate looked at him carefully. "It means you have to stop looking at your life the way you always have." Noah frowned. "The way I always have." The phantom nodded. "Like Noah Lunas." Noah went quiet. "What do you mean?" Tate's expression remained calm. "Because Noah Lunas isn't objective." The words landed harder than Noah expected. He looks at things through his own beliefs, his own experiences, his own assumptions. He decides what something means before he truly understands what he's seeing. Noah looked away. "So you're saying I'm biased?" "I'm saying your view is sentimental and naive," Tate replied. "But if you want to see the truth, you can't only look at things through the version of yourself that already has an answer." Noah looked back at him. "Then what does it mean to stop looking in the mirror?" The phantom glanced toward the glass. "Looking in the mirror means seeing everything through a reflection of yourself." Noah listened. "It means judging the world based on what you already believe, your fears, your expectations, your memories, your assumptions." The phantom paused. "You look at something and immediately decide what it is because of what you think it should be." Noah stared at the mirror. "And that's backwards." Tate nodded. "Because the mirror shows you a version of reality, but it isn't reality itself." Noah was silent. "Then how do I stop?" The phantom looked at him. "Look at things without deciding what they mean first." A pause. "See what is actually there." Noah looked down at the message on the construction paper. For the first time, he wondered if the reason he couldn't read it wasn't that the message was hidden. Maybe it was because he had been looking at it through the wrong lens. The phantom whispered again. "Stop looking in the mirror, Noe. Because sometimes the thing you think is right side up." He looked toward the reflection. "Is the thing that's been upside down the entire time." The phantom stood directly in front of the refrigerator. Noah watched as the 14-year-old Tate's expression changed. The sadness was still there, but now there was something else. A warning. The last person who stopped looking in the mirror, the Phantom said quietly, the last person who stopped believing only what they were told or what they thought they saw standing right in front of them. He slowly pointed toward the refrigerator. Serena. Noah followed his gaze. This very room, Tate whispered, this is where Serena stopped looking in the mirror. Noah felt a chill run through him. She realized the truth. The Phantom looked back at him. And that's the terrifying part, Noah swallowed. Why? Because once you stop looking in the mirror, you can't go back. The Phantom stepped closer. You start seeing things differently, you start noticing things people don't want you to notice. Noah stared at him. And then what? Tate's expression became even sadder. Then you become dangerous. To whom? The Phantom didn't answer right away. To the mirror that wants the reflection to stay in place. Noah looked toward the refrigerator again as the Phantom explained. Serena was going to die. The Phantom nodded slowly. Whether she got hit by the car or not. Noah went silent. The words made his stomach tighten. Have you ever seen a movie where someone discovers something they're not supposed to know? The Phantom asked. Or they overhear something they were never meant to hear. Noah shrugged. What usually happens to them? The Phantom gave a small, humorless smile. Someone kills them. He paused. Bingo. Noah looked unsettled. Serena wasn't the first. The Phantom's voice lowered. And she probably won't be the last. Noah stared at the boy in front of him. You're saying someone was going to make sure she disappeared. The Phantom looked toward the mirror. I'm saying Serena found out something. A pause. And some truths are not meant to be found. The kitchen felt colder. The family dinner continued somewhere beyond the walls, completely unaware of the conversation happening inside. The Phantom looked back at Noah. Serena was going to die. His voice became a whisper. Either by something natural or by someone who has nothing to lose. He paused. Or by something nobody would believe. The Phantom grew quiet. Then he looked directly at Noah. Have you ever wondered? Noah watched him carefully. Why doesn't Tate like doctors? Noah frowned. What? The Phantom tilted his head. Why does he avoid them? Why does he get uncomfortable when they ask too many questions? Why doesn't he like people looking too closely? Noah shook his head. I always thought it was anxiety. The Phantom didn't answer. Instead he looked toward the floor. When doctors get too close to Tate. His voice became quieter. They stop practicing medicine. Noah stared at him. What does that mean? The Phantom looked back up. When people find out things they're not supposed to find out. He paused. They disappear. Noah felt a chill. Doctors. The Phantom nodded. Anyone who gets too close, anyone who starts asking the wrong questions, anyone who begins to see past the reflection. Noah shook his head. That doesn't make sense. The Phantom's expression softened. That's because you're still trying to look at it the way you've always looked at everything. Noah looked toward the mirror. The words from before echoed in his mind. Everything is backwards. The Phantom continued. You're searching for a simple explanation. He stepped closer. But sometimes the truth isn't simple. Noah stared at the 14-year-old version of Tate. Are you saying Tate knows? The Phantom didn't answer. He only looked sad. I'm saying Tate has spent a long time trying to survive. Noah's chest tightened. And the people who tried to help him. The Phantom looked toward the darkness beyond the kitchen. There were never any people near him who ever helped. Nosy strangers got too close. A long silence filled the room. And when someone gets too close, the Phantom whispered, they stop seeing the mirror. Noah looked at him. Or they stop being there to see anything at all. The Phantom went quiet for a moment. Then he spoke again. In order to look in the mirror and be deceived. He looked at Noah. Your head has to be attached to your body. Noah stared at him, unsettled by the strange way he said it. What does that mean? The Phantom didn't smile. It means there are people who stopped looking in the mirror because they weren't around anymore to look at anything because someone detached their neck from their shoulders. A cold feeling moved through Noah. The Phantom glanced toward the refrigerator again. In their cases, it wasn't just that they stopped asking questions. He paused. They stopped seeing anything in the way everyone expected. Noah shook his head. You're talking about doctors. The Phantom nodded slowly. I'm sure if you researched doctors who crossed paths with Tate from 1972 to 1995, you'd find some who stopped practicing. Noah remained silent. Some who disappeared. The word hung in the air. Or what's the nicer way of saying it? The Phantom looked at him. Vanished and became maggot food. Noah felt his stomach tighten. But why? The Phantom's expression changed. Not anger. Not fear. Something closer to grief. Because people who only look at the reflection accept the first explanation they're given. He stepped closer. They say someone moved away. They say someone retired. They say someone quit. A pause. But the people who stop looking in the mirror ask different questions. Noah looked toward the reflection in the glass. And what happens when they ask? The Phantom's voice became almost a whisper. Sometimes they find answers. A silence followed. He looked back at Noah. Or the answers find them first seconds before a weapon breaks their neck. You're fooling me, Noah said. His voice was sharper than he expected. He shook his head, trying to push away the fear creeping into his thoughts. If Tate knew something like that was happening, he wouldn't stay silent. The Phantom looked at him. For a moment he said nothing. Then his expression changed. Not anger. Disappointment. How can you still believe that, Noah? Noah frowned. What? The Phantom stepped closer. When someone has money, power, and protection, the rules don't always look the same. Noah stared at him. You're saying Tate could just... The Phantom interrupted. I'm saying people with influence can make problems disappear, especially if a big problem walks on two legs and wears a white jacket. The words echoed in the kitchen. Noah looked away. He thought about Tate. The things Tate had said over the years. The things that had sounded like jokes. The things Noah had dismissed because they were too uncomfortable to take seriously. The Phantom watched his reaction. Remember when Tate said he could commit murder and get away with it? Noah's face tightened. He was angry he was joking. Was he? Noah looked back at him. The Phantom's voice became quieter. Sometimes people say things as jokes because saying them seriously would make everyone uncomfortable. Noah shook his head. No, Tate wouldn't. The Phantom studied him. That's the problem with looking in the mirror. Noah went silent. You see the person you believe someone is. The Phantom pointed toward the reflection. You see the version that makes sense to you. A pause. But you don't always see the parts that don't fit. Noah looked toward the mirror. The reflection stared back. His own face. His own doubts. His own assumptions. The Phantom whispered. Stop asking what you want the answer to be. Ask what you would see if you weren't afraid of the answer. The Phantom was silent for a long moment. Noah could see the conflict on his face. The 14-year-old Tate looked less like a monster and more like someone carrying a warning he wished he didn't have to give. Then the Phantom turned away. He started walking toward the darkness at the edge of the kitchen. Noah. Noah looked up. The Phantom stopped but didn't turn around. And do yourself one favor. His voice was quiet. Don't tell anybody what I told you. Noah frowned. What? The Phantom slowly looked back over his shoulder. If you tell somebody... He paused. It goes up the grapevine. The word sent an uneasy feeling through Noah. Everybody around here talks to everybody, and there's a 100% chance that the person you don't want to hear what you say will decide you're a liability. The Phantom's eyes moved toward the dining room, where the sounds of the family dinner continued. Secrets don't stay secrets for long. Noah stared at him. So, unless you want to become the next headless horseman. The Phantom let the words hang in the air. Keep your mouth shut. Noah felt a chill. The warning sounded almost impossible. Almost like another piece of the nightmare. But the fear in Tate's expression made Noah take it seriously. The Phantom turned away again. Noah called after him. Tate. The figure stopped. Are you warning me? Noah swallowed. Or threatening me? For a moment there was only silence. Then the phantom answered. Neither. He looked back. I'm trying to keep you alive. Noah nodded. Has Tate ever killed anyone? Noah's question came out quieter than he expected. The phantom had already started to walk away, but he stopped. For a moment he didn't move. The kitchen felt completely silent. Then the 14-year-old Tate slowly turned back. He looked at Noah. Not with anger. Not with fear. With sadness. I think you already know the answer. Noah's chest tightened. No, I don't. The phantom watched him carefully. Yes, you do. Noah shook his head. If I knew, I wouldn't be asking. The phantom looked toward the mirror. Sometimes you ask a question because you want someone else to say the answer first. Noah didn't respond. The phantom continued. You've spent years looking at Tate through the reflection. Noah frowned. Meaning you've already collected pieces of the truth. The phantom looked back at him. The things he said, the things he avoided, the moments that didn't make sense. A pause. You just decided what those things meant before you looked closer. Noah felt a knot forming in his stomach. You're saying he did. The phantom didn't answer. Sometimes the person who needs help isn't the person everyone is afraid of. Noah stared at him. Then who is? The phantom's expression darkened. That's what you've been trying to find out. The lights flickered again. The phantom began fading into the shadows. Noah called after him. Tate. The figure paused. Tell me the truth. The phantom looked back one last time. The truth is never hidden in the answer you expect. Then he disappeared. And Noah was left alone with the question he had asked. And the fear that maybe he wasn't ready for the answer. The lights above Noah flickered. When they steadied again, the kitchen was empty. Only the refrigerator remained. And on the floor beside it was the piece of construction paper. The message wasn't written there. The kitchen door creaked open as Terrence leaned his head inside. His expression shifted from mild curiosity to concern the moment he spotted Noah sitting alone. Noah, he asked, are you okay? You've been gone for 15 minutes. Noah didn't answer. Terrence took another step into the kitchen. The young man was sitting in one of the chairs at the table, elbows resting on his knees, his complexion unnaturally pale. His breathing was shallow, and he stared blankly at the floor as if he hadn't even noticed someone had entered. Talia wanted to know if you needed any help, Terrence continued gently, or if you weren't feeling well. Dinner's halfway over. Noah swallowed hard but couldn't find the words. His stomach churned and the room seemed to tilt beneath him. Terrence's concern deepened. You don't look good. Without waiting for a response, he turned back toward the dining room. Talia, he called. His voice carrying enough urgency to quiet the conversation around the table. I think Noah's sick. The scraping of a chair echoed through the dining room. Talia was on her feet immediately, hurrying into the kitchen without a second thought. When she saw Noah sitting there, pale and motionless, her motherly instincts took over. Oh, sweetheart. She knelt beside him and gently brushed a few strands of hair away from his forehead before placing the back of her hand against his skin. What's wrong, honey? She asked softly. You're freezing, and you look like you've seen a ghost. Noah blinked, trying to focus on her face. I don't know, he whispered. I just suddenly felt dizzy. Talia kept her hand on his forehead before moving it to his cheek, studying his face. You're as white as a sheet. Terrence stepped beside her, his expression tense. Do you think he's coming down with something? I don't know, Talia replied quietly, never taking her eyes off Noah. But whatever it is, he's not going back to that table until we figure out what's wrong. She crouched lower so she was at eye level with him. Noah, sweetheart, can you tell me if you're in pain? Are you nauseous? Is your head hurting? Noah closed his eyes for a moment and nodded weakly. My head, everything just feels wrong. Talia gently squeezed his hand. Okay, don't try to stand up, just stay right here, we're going to take care of you. Andrew carefully lifted Noah into his arms and carried him upstairs to Tate's childhood bedroom. Noah barely had the strength to protest. His body felt weak, his skin cold, and his thoughts were clouded as Andrew gently laid him on the neatly made bed. Pulling a small medical kit from his bag, Andrew began a brief examination. He checked Noah's pulse, blood pressure, pupils, and breathing before asking a few routine questions about nausea, dizziness, and stomach pain. After several minutes, Talia, who had been anxiously standing beside the bed, looked at him expectantly. "Well," she asked. Andrew removed the blood pressure cuff and offered a reassuring smile. "There doesn't seem to be anything physically wrong with him, which is good news." Talia exhaled in relief. "In my opinion, he's just cold and clammy. It was raining earlier. He may have gotten chilled walking through the rain, and sometimes that can leave someone feeling weak or lightheaded." Noah gave a faint nod but said nothing. "I'd just let him rest for a little while," Andrew continued. "Keep him warm and make sure he drinks some fluids." Talia smiled gratefully. "Thank you." Andrew glanced toward the hallway. "Why don't you head back downstairs? I'm finished with dinner anyway. I'll stay with him for a few minutes. When you're ready to put the food away, just let me know and I'll come help." "All right," Talia replied with a nod. "Thank you, Andrew." She gave Noah's shoulder a gentle squeeze before leaving the room, quietly closing the bedroom door behind her. The moment her footsteps faded down the staircase, Andrew's expression changed. He walked calmly to the bedroom door. Click. He turned the lock. Noah slowly opened his eyes. Andrew turned back toward the bed, the reassuring smile gone. "What is really going on?" he asked quietly. Noah remained silent. Andrew crossed the room and sat in the chair beside the bed. "Your pulse was much higher than it should have been," he said, "not the kind of increase I'd expect from getting caught in the rain." He folded his hands together. "You weren't acting like someone with food poisoning. Your blood pressure was normal. Your breathing settled the moment everyone left the room." Andrew studied Noah's face carefully. "You looked frightened." The room fell silent. Andrew's voice softened. "So I'll ask you again." He leaned forward slightly. "What happened downstairs?" Noah's mind flashed back to the Phantom's warning. "Don't tell anybody, you tell anybody and it goes up the grapevine. Everybody around here talks to everybody. Unless you want to be the headless horseman, keep your mouth shut." His heart pounded. Andrew was waiting patiently, his eyes fixed on Noah, watching for even the slightest crack in his story. Noah forced himself to smile. "I'm fine," he said quietly. "I gave blood earlier today, I just feel a little faint." Andrew tilted his head. "Gave blood?" Noah nodded. "Yeah, sometimes after I donate, my blood pressure gets a little weird. I get dizzy for a while." He shrugged as naturally as he could. "It's nothing to worry about." Andrew didn't answer immediately. Instead, he continued studying Noah's face, noticing how tightly he was gripping the blanket and how carefully he chose each word. "Really?" Andrew asked gently. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." Andrew rested his elbows on his knees. "You know you can talk to me if you want to." Noah looked down at his hands. He wanted to tell someone. He wanted to tell Andrew about the ghost, about the phantom, and about the fear that had settled in his chest. But the warning echoed through his mind. "Keep your mouth shut." Noah swallowed. "I'm good," he said with a small, appreciative smile. "You're sweet to ask." Andrew returned the smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "All right," he said quietly, "I won't push." He stood from the chair and walked toward the door, resting his hand on the doorknob. "But if that changes," Andrew said without turning around, "my door is always open." Noah nodded. "Thanks." Andrew unlocked the bedroom door and stepped into the hallway, leaving Noah alone with the silence, and the Phantom's warning still ringing in his ears. A soft knock echoed against the bedroom door. Before Noah could answer, the door swung open. Tate stepped inside. This one wasn't a ghost. He closed the door behind him and leaned casually against it, a crooked grin spreading across his face. "How's the drama, princess?" Tate teased as he crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed. Noah rolled his eyes and blew a loud raspberry in Tate's direction. Tate laughed. "Very mature." "I know." Tate looked him over, his smile fatting just enough to reveal the concern underneath. "You gave everyone downstairs a scare." "I'm feeling better now," Noah replied, shifting himself into a more comfortable position against the headboard. It was just a vasovagal syncope from giving blood a few hours ago. It's nothing serious. Tate raised an eyebrow. Vasovagal syncope. Yeah, Noah nodded. Sometimes after donating blood, your blood pressure can suddenly drop. I just got lightheaded and woozy for a minute, that's all. Tate studied him for a moment. So you're telling me you didn't decide to fake an illness just to get out of Sunday dinner? Noah smirked. I considered it. I knew it. But passing out seemed a little excessive, don't you think? Tate chuckled. A little. For a brief moment, the tension dissolved into familiar banter. Then Tate's expression softened. You really scared me. Noah looked up. I know. When Dad came into the dining room and said you were sick, Tate hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck, I thought something was seriously wrong. Noah offered him a reassuring smile. I'm okay. Tate let out a slow breath, relief washing over his face. Good, he said quietly, because I'd rather deal with you blowing raspberries at me than watch you collapse again. Noah laughed. That's probably the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Don't get used to it. I wouldn't dream of it. The two of them shared a smile, the earlier panic giving way to a familiar sense of comfort, even if neither of them knew that Noah was still carrying a secret he couldn't bring himself to share. Tate sat quietly for a moment, watching Noah's face. You still look pale, he muttered. Before Noah could react, Tate reached over and began unbuttoning the top few buttons of Noah's shirt. Tate. Noah instinctively caught his wrists, but Tate gently moved Noah's hands aside. Hold still. Noah sighed, knowing from experience that arguing would only make Tate more determined. Without another word, Tate rested the palm of his hand over Noah's chest, just above his heart. The room fell silent. Noah could feel the steady warmth of Tate's hand as the seconds ticked by. Tate's eyes remained fixed, concentrating on the rhythm beneath his palm. After about 20 seconds, Tate lifted his hand away. Your heartbeat feels a lot steadier now, he said, sounding relieved. Andrew said it wasn't anything too serious. Noah nodded. He thinks it's just from giving blood. That's what he told me. Tate began fastening the buttons he'd undone before looking back at Noah. If you want to stay up here a little longer, that's fine. Dinner will still be there later. Noah gave a tired smile. I think I might. Tate stood long enough to kick off his shoes before climbing onto the bed beside him, settling against the headboard. He glanced over with a faint grin. You're not too weak to cuddle, are you? Noah let out a quiet laugh despite himself. I don't think that's a recognized medical test. No, Tate replied, but I'm willing to conduct the research. Shaking his head with an amused smile, Noah shifted closer until he was resting comfortably beside Tate. Happy now? Noah asked. Tate's grin widened. Much. The room grew quiet again. Outside, rain tapped softly against the bedroom windows while, for the first time since the ghost's warning, Noah felt some of the tension ease from his shoulders. Even so, the phantom's words lingered in the back of his mind, refusing to let him fully relax. For nearly 5 minutes, neither of them spoke. The only sounds in the room were the rain tapping against the window and the steady rhythm of their breathing. Finally, Tate broke the silence. So, he said casually, when do I get to meet the bitch? Noah turned his head, blinking in confusion. What? Tate didn't hesitate. I said, when do I get to meet your bitch? Noah frowned. I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. Tate let out an exaggerated sigh and rolled his eyes, even though Noah couldn't see it. This Riley person. Noah's eyebrows lifted. Riley. Yes, Riley, Tate replied, a hint of jealousy creeping into his voice. Everyone downstairs has been talking about her nonstop for, a year and a half. Every family dinner somebody brings her up. He folded his arms across his chest. So, when do I finally get to meet her? Noah stared at him for a second before a laugh escaped. Is that what this is about? What? You're jealous. I am not. You just called someone you've never met the bitch. I did, Tate admitted without shame. Why? Because she's apparently important enough that everyone knows who she is except me. Noah couldn't help smiling. That's a terrible reason. It's an honest one. Noah shook his head. I don't even know if she'd want to come to one of these dinners. Tate looked at him. So there is a chance. Noah shrugged. Maybe. Tate nodded slowly. Good. Good. I'd like to know who's managed to keep everyone's attention for the last year and a half. Noah smirked. I thought you didn't care. I don't, Tate said a little too quickly. Noah laughed. You're a terrible liar. Tate sighed dramatically. Fine. He glanced at Noah. I cared just enough to want to see what all the fuss is about. Noah smiled, recognizing the jealousy Tate was trying and failing to hide beneath his sarcasm. Noah shook his head. You're not really part of my life anymore, Tate. Tate's smile faded. What do you mean? You're not in my life today, you're not in my friend's circle, you're not family, we just happen to know the same people. Tate remained silent. Noah continued. If I ever got engaged and got married, you wouldn't be invited to the wedding. Tate looked genuinely taken aback. You wouldn't invite me to your wedding? I wouldn't. Seriously? Noah nodded. My friends who aren't from Brown would all be asking, who's that guy? You never come to any of my events, so it'd just be awkward. Tate stared at him, clearly offended. Wow. Noah simply shrugged. I wouldn't invite you. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, completely out of nowhere, Noah started laughing. It began as a quiet chuckle before growing into full-blown laughter. Tate frowned. What's so funny? Noah shook his head, unable to answer. Nothing. It doesn't look like anything. Noah covered his face, still laughing. Tate folded his arms. Noah. Noah took a deep breath, trying to compose himself, but the moment he looked back at Tate, he lost it all over again. Tate stared at him in disbelief. Should I be offended? Noah only laughed harder. I can't tell if you're laughing at me or with me. Noah wiped a tear from the corner of his eye, still unable to get a single explanation out. Tate sighed dramatically. I hate it when you're the only one in on the joke. That only made Noah laugh again. Tate watched Noah for a moment before a mischievous grin spread across his face. He leaned over. Boop. His finger gently poked the tip of Noah's nose. Noah blinked. Did you just boop me? Tate smiled innocently. No. You absolutely did. Noah reached up and pushed Tate's finger away. Stop that, Tate, I'm not a clown. Tate's grin only grew wider. Oh. He leaned in again. Boop. His fingertip tapped Noah's nose a second time. Noah swatted his hand away. Tate. What? You know exactly what. I was checking to make sure your nose still worked. My nose doesn't need medical attention. Andrew checked your pulse, I'm checking your boop reflex. My boop reflex. Very important diagnostic test. Noah laughed despite himself. You're ridiculous. I've been called worse. Tate waited a beat, pretending to be perfectly serious. Then, boop. He poked Noah's nose for a third time. Noah groaned and buried his face in the pillow. I cannot believe you're a grown man. And yet, Tate said proudly, I keep getting your nose. Noah peeked over the pillow. If you boop me one more time. What? I'm biting your finger. Tate raised an eyebrow. Threat noted. There was a brief silence. Noah began to relax again. Without warning. Boop. Tate darted in with one lightning fast poke before immediately pulling his hand back out of reach. Noah burst out laughing. I warned you. You did. And you still did it. Worth it, Tate said with a satisfied grin. Tate's playful grin softened. Without saying a word, he reached down and gently picked up Noah's right foot, resting it across his lap. What are you doing? Noah asked. Tate wrapped one hand around Noah's heel and began slowly massaging the arch of his foot with his thumb. Noah gave him a puzzled look. Tate. When I feel terrible, Tate said quietly, or my blood pressure is low or I can't seem to regulate my body temperature. He gently worked his way toward Noah's toes. Joey used to rub my feet when I was a little boy. Noah listened without interrupting. He'd massage my toes one at a time. Tate smiled faintly at the memory. He always said rubbing them helped me relax. He claimed it released endorphins and calmed my body down. His thumbs continued their slow, rhythmic movements. I don't know if it was the massage or just knowing someone was taking care of me. Noah's expression softened, but it always made me feel better. Tate glanced up, so I figured it couldn't hurt. Noah let out a quiet chuckle. You've gone from booping my nose to giving me a foot massage. I'm a man of many talents. So I've noticed. The room fell quiet again as Tate continued gently massaging Noah's foot, hoping that, just as Joey had once comforted him, he might be able to return that same kindness to someone else. Footsteps echoed softly in the hallway. Chloe was looking for her husband when she happened to pass Tate's childhood bedroom. The door was partly open. She glanced inside. Tate was sitting on the edge of the bed with Noah's foot resting in his lap, gently massaging it while Noah lay comfortably against the pillows. For a moment Chloe simply stood there. Neither of them noticed her. A strange ache settled in her chest. She had seen Tate angry. She had seen him sarcastically. She had seen him distant. But this quiet tenderness was different. His movements were gentle, patient, almost instinctive, as though taking care of Noah came as naturally as breathing. An uncomfortable feeling crept over her. Jealousy. Not because of the massage itself, but because of how effortlessly Tate seemed to devote his attention to Noah. She couldn't remember the last time he had looked at her with that same quiet concern. Her fingers tightened around the doorframe. He used to share a bed with him, she thought. The thought lingered longer than she wanted it to. She told herself there was an explanation. There always seemed to be one whenever Noah was involved. Even so, she couldn't ignore the envy quietly building inside her. She wished just once that Tate would fuss over her the way he was fussing over Noah now. Noah caught Tate staring at his feet. Not just glancing. Staring. His eyes narrowed. No. A slow grin spread across Tate's face. Know what? I know that look. You don't know anything. I absolutely do. Noah's eyes widened as realization dawned on him. Oh no. With a startled squeal, Noah scrambled backward across the bed, trying to put as much distance between himself and Tate as possible. Tate, don't you dare. Too late. Tate lunged forward and caught Noah by both ankles. Gotcha. Tate, Noah laughed, trying to pull free. Tate effortlessly tugged on Noah's heels, sliding him back across the bed until he was within arm's reach. There is nowhere to run. No, Tate, please. A mischievous smile crossed Tate's face. You should have surrendered. The moment Tate's fingers found the soles of Noah's feet, Noah exploded into laughter. Ha ha ha, Tate. Noah kicked instinctively, but Tate held onto one ankle while lightly tickling the arch of his foot with the other hand. Stop, I'm serious. Oh, Tate teased, you don't sound very serious. I mean it. You also said I couldn't boop your nose. No, that's different. Tate switched to Noah's toes, wiggling his fingers between them. Noah laughed so hard that tears began forming in the corners of his eyes. Tate, I'm going to get you. You have to catch me first. I'm warning you. I don't think you are. Noah reached toward Tate, trying to tickle him back, but every attempt dissolved into another fit of laughter before he could get close. Finally, after another few seconds, Tate relented and let go. Noah immediately curled into a ball, hugging a pillow as he tried to catch his breath. He gasped between laughs, in the worst. Tate folded his arms with a satisfied smile. And yet, he leaned over just enough to deliver one final, playful poke to the bottom of Noah's foot. Noah yelped. Tate. Worth it, Tate said with a grin. Noah shook his head, still laughing despite himself. I cannot believe we're adults. I'm beginning to think that's optional, Tate replied. That only sent Noah into another round of laughter. Not wanting to interrupt them or reveal she'd been watching, Chloe quietly stepped away from the doorway and continued down the hall, carrying the uncomfortable feeling with her in silence. The laughter gradually faded until the room grew quiet again. Tate leaned back against the headboard, his expression becoming more serious. You scared me down there in the kitchen, he said quietly. Noah looked over at him. I thought you were having a serious medical issue. I'm sorry. I know it wasn't your fault, Tate shrugged. It's just, seeing you sitting there looking pale like that wasn't exactly reassuring. Noah gave him an apologetic smile. I'm okay now. I know. Tate let out a small laugh. Besides, it's not like hospitals are anything new to me. Noah raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? I've probably set the Lowe's Angels record for the most impromptu trips to the emergency room. Noah laughed. I wouldn't be surprised. My personal favorite, Tate continued with a grin, was when we were building that treehouse out back. Oh, I remember that. How could you not, Tate said. I was trying to hammer in a nail like I knew what I was doing. You definitely didn't. I definitely didn't. Tate held up his right hand, looking at his thumb. I missed the board completely and drove the nail straight through my thumb. Noah winced. I still remember you screaming. I wasn't screaming. Tate. I was expressing myself loudly. You were crying before Uncle Joey even made it across the yard. Tate groaned. I was 10. You were convinced your thumb was going to fall off. I genuinely believed it was. Noah laughed. You kept asking the doctor if you'd ever be able to play video games again. I had my priorities. And then you made them save the nail. Tate looked almost offended. It was evidence. Evidence of what? That the treehouse attacked me. Noah shook his head, smiling. I still can't believe you blamed the treehouse. It knew what it did. Noah laughed again, the earlier scare now feeling much farther away. Tate smiled too, relieved to see Noah looking more like himself. I'll take you laughing at me, Tate said, over scaring me like that any day. Tate continued talking for several more minutes, drifting from one childhood story to another. And then Joey swore he wasn't laughing at me, Tate said with a smirk. Meanwhile, everyone else was. There was no response. Tate frowned. Noah. Silence. He glanced over. Noah had been lying quietly beside him, eyes closed, his breathing slow and even. Tate smiled faintly. Did you fall asleep already? He gave Noah's shoulder a gentle nudge. Noah. No response. The smile disappeared from Tate's face. He nudged him again, a little firmer this time. Noah. Still nothing. A knot formed in Tate's stomach. Noah. Panic crept into his voice as he climbed off the bed. Andrew, Tate shouted toward the hallway. Andrew. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Andrew hurried into the bedroom. What happened? He just passed out, Tate said, his voice tight with worry. He was talking to me 1 minute and then he just conked out. Andrew walked to the bedside and gently took Noah's wrist, feeling for his pulse. He waited several seconds before nodding. His pulse is normal. Tate looked unconvinced. But he's not waking up. Andrew placed the back of his hand against Noah's forehead before observing the steady rise and fall of his chest. His breathing is normal too. He still looks really pale, Tate said, unable to hide the concern in his voice. Andrew nodded. He does, but after giving blood, feeling faint, and everything that's happened today, he's probably exhausted. You really think he's just asleep? I think his body has had enough for one day. Andrew pulled the blanket a little higher over Noah's shoulders. Let's let him rest. Tate remained standing beside the bed, his eyes fixed on Noah's face. Andrew noticed the worry written all over him. If he doesn't improve over the next 15 minutes, Andrew said calmly, we'll reassess and decide whether we need to do anything else. Tate nodded, though he still didn't look reassured. Andrew gave Noah one last glance before heading toward the door. Come downstairs if you need me. The bedroom fell quiet again after Andrew left. Tate sat back down on the edge of the bed, never taking his eyes off Noah. You've scared me twice today, he murmured softly. He reached over and gently brushed a strand of hair away from Noah's forehead. So you can stop showing off now. Noah didn't stir. Tate let out a slow breath and settled into the chair beside the bed, deciding that if Noah was going to sleep, he wasn't going to leave him alone. Tate remained seated beside the bed, his eyes never leaving Noah. His frustration was still written all over his face. If you die on me, Tate muttered, trying to hide how frightened he really was, I will personally hold you responsible. Noah didn't move. I'll skip your funeral, do you hear me? Tate continued. I won't even go. The room was silent. Tate waited for Noah to smirk or make some sarcastic comment. Nothing. His expression slowly changed. Noah. He watched Noah's chest. It wasn't moving. Tate leaned closer. Noah. No breath. His pulse of panic surged. Noah. He grabbed Noah's shoulders and gave him a firm shake. There was still no response. Tate quickly rolled Noah flat onto his back, making sure his airway was clear as best he could. Andrew, he shouted at the top of his lungs. Andrew. No answer. Tate looked at Noah again. Still no visible breath. His hands trembled. Come on, come on. He checked for signs of breathing one more time. Andrew, he yelled again, his voice breaking. Footsteps thundered up the staircase. Andrew burst through the bedroom door. What happened? He's not breathing, Tate cried, moving aside just enough for Andrew to reach the bed. Andrew immediately knelt beside Noah and began assessing him, his calm demeanor contrasting sharply with Tate's panic. Tate, Andrew said firmly, I need room. Tate stepped back only a pace, his heart pounding as he watched Andrew work, desperate for Noah to take even a single breath. Start CPR, Andrew said, already pulling his phone from his pocket. I'm calling 911. He turned toward the hallway as he dialed, speaking rapidly into the phone. We have an unresponsive young adult who's not breathing. We're starting CPR now. Tate's hands shook as he quickly unbuttoned and pulled Noah's shirt open so he could place his hands correctly on the center of Noah's chest. Come on, Noah, he whispered. Fighting through his panic, Tate interlocked his hands and began delivering firm, steady chest compressions, counting each one aloud to keep himself focused. 1, 2, 3. Andrew remained on the phone, answering the dispatcher's questions while glancing back toward the bed. They're sending an ambulance, he called. Keep going, don't stop unless he starts breathing or the paramedics take over. Tate continued the compressions. Tears beginning to form in his eyes. 28, 29, 30. He paused just long enough to open Noah's airway, tilting his head back and lifting his chin. Please. Following the dispatcher's instructions relayed by Andrew, Tate gave rescue breaths, watching carefully for Noah's chest to rise before immediately returning to chest compressions. 1, 2, 3. The only sounds in the room were Tate counting through the compressions, Andrew's voice speaking with the emergency dispatcher, and the desperate hope that Noah would begin breathing again before the ambulance arrived. By the time the paramedics rushed into the bedroom with their equipment, Tate had already completed 11 cycles of CPR. He was beginning his 12th year. His hands compressed the center of Noah's chest with exhausted determination. 28, 29, 30. Tate opened Noah's airway, pinched his nose, and sealed his mouth over Noah's. He gave a rescue breath, watching desperately for Noah's chest to rise. Under any other circumstance, the idea of putting his mouth on Noah's would have made him deeply uncomfortable. But this wasn't any other circumstance. This was life or death. Nothing else mattered. The lead paramedic hurried to Tate's side. We've got him, she said firmly. Keep going until we tell you to stop. Tate finished the rescue breaths and immediately returned to chest compressions, refusing to give up. Come on, Noah, he pleaded between counts. Come on. The paramedics quickly unpacked their equipment, attached monitoring pads, and prepared to take over as Tate continued CPR, doing everything he could to keep his buddy alive until they were ready. One of the paramedics knelt beside Noah while another attached the cardiac monitor. Patient is male, she said as she began her assessment. He's pale and cool to the touch. She looked at Tate. What happened? He passed out, Tate answered, breathing hard from the CPR. He was talking to me 1 minute, then he just stopped responding. A few minutes later, he wasn't breathing. The paramedic nodded. Did he vomit at any point today? No. Any bleeding, any recent injuries or wounds? Tate shook his head. No bleeding, no injuries. Any known medical conditions? Anemia, bleeding disorders, diabetes, recent infections? No, Tate replied immediately, none that I know of. Andrew stepped forward. He donated blood earlier today, he said. A few hours later he became lightheaded and had what sounded like a vasovagal episode. He'd been awake and talking normally before he became unresponsive. The paramedic acknowledged the information while continuing her assessment. So no history of fainting. Tate shook his head. Not like this, I've never seen him pass out before. The paramedic looked at the monitor and then back at Noah. All right, let's continue our assessment and get him stabilized. We'll transport him to the hospital as soon as we're ready. The room filled with focused activity as the paramedics continued working, each trying to determine why an otherwise healthy young man had suddenly become unresponsive. One of the paramedics picked up Noah's right hand. Hold on, she said. She looked more closely at his fingertips. His right hand is turning blue. She looked up at Andrew. Has the patient ever had this before? Andrew shook his head. Not that I'm aware of. Tate immediately looked over. I've never seen that happen to him. The paramedic nodded and reached into her kit, pulling out a small penlight. She gently lifted one of Noah's eyelids and shone the light into his pupil. Minimal pupillary response, she said quietly to her partner. She checked the other eye with the same result. Her partner continued monitoring Noah while she examined his blue fingertips. Capillary refill is delayed, she observed. She felt the temperature of his hand. It's cold. Tate's anxiety deepened. What does that mean? It means he's not getting enough oxygenated blood to his extremities, the paramedic replied without looking away from Noah. The bluish discoloration is called cyanosis. It can happen when circulation or oxygen delivery is severely compromised. She looked at her partner. We need high-flow oxygen now. Her partner immediately reached for the oxygen equipment while the cardiac monitor continued tracing Noah's heart rhythm. Andrew folded his arms, concern etched across his face. So what's causing it? The paramedic shook her head. Not enough information yet. Cyanosis is a sign, not a diagnosis. She glanced back at Noah. Our priority is restoring and maintaining adequate breathing and circulation. We can determine the underlying cause once he's stabilized. The room fell silent except for the monitor's beeping and the controlled urgency of the paramedics as they continued working to save Noah's life. The waiting room doors opened, and a doctor stepped out into the hallway. Tate, Andrew, are any of Noah's friends here? Everyone looked up. The man approaching them was familiar. Tate recognized him almost immediately. Dr. Coleman. Dr. Dan Coleman smiled slightly. I was wondering if I'd see you again. Tate stood up. Yeah, it's been a few years. Dr. Coleman looked around at the group. Are you all Noah's family? Everyone exchanged glances before nodding. We're the people closest to him, Tate answered. The doctor gave a small nod. All right, I'm glad you brought him in. He looked directly at Tate. Actually, when I first heard the name, I thought you were the one coming back to see me. Tate looked surprised. Dr. Coleman smiled. I'm glad you're doing well. You're looking much healthier than the last time I saw you. Tate gave a small nod, though his attention quickly returned to Noah. How is he? The doctor's expression became more serious. He's stable right now, but I do want to talk about something we noticed. Everyone became quiet. When we examined Noah, we noticed his hands were unusually cold, and he had some bluish discoloration in his fingers. Tate's face tightened. Is that serious? It can look alarming, Dr. Coleman explained, but based on what we've seen so far, it appears to be a mild case of Raynaud's phenomenon. Andrew frowned slightly. Raynaud's? Dr. Coleman nodded. It's a condition where the small blood vessels in the fingers and toes overreact to cold temperatures or stress. The blood flow temporarily decreases, which can cause the fingers to become cold, pale, or bluish. Tate looked down the hallway toward Noah's room. So that's why his hand looked like that. Most likely, the doctor said. The rain, the stress on his body today, donating blood, and the shock of the episode may have all contributed. Tate let out a slow breath. Does he have this normally? Some people have mild episodes and don't even realize it, Dr. Coleman replied. We'll want to ask him more questions once he's awake and run the appropriate tests to determine whether it's primary Raynaud's or related to something else. Tate nodded, still worried. But he's going to be okay. Dr. Coleman gave him a reassuring look. Right now, we're focused on keeping him stable and figuring out why this happened. The fact that you noticed something was wrong and got him here quickly was important. Tate looked down, quietly relieved but still shaken. Yeah. Dr. Coleman placed a hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing. Tate looked past Dr. Coleman toward the hospital hallway. When can I see him? Dr. Coleman studied Tate's expression for a moment before answering. We're going to let him rest for a few hours. Tate frowned. Rest? Yes, the doctor said calmly. He's been through quite an ordeal, his body is exhausted. Tate looked down. But he's awake, right? He is stable, Dr. Coleman reassured him, but right now his body needs time to recover. He paused, choosing his words carefully. The fatigue and lack of energy he's experiencing can be similar to what happens after a major physical event like after a seizure. Not because Noah had a seizure, he didn't, but because the body can go through a tremendous amount of stress when something interrupts normal function. Tate nodded slowly. When the body is pushed too far, it uses a lot of energy trying to stabilize itself and heal. That can leave someone feeling completely drained afterward. Andrew listened quietly as Dr. Coleman continued. Right now, the best thing we can do is let him sleep and monitor him. Tate looked toward the hallway again. How long? I'd like him to rest for at least the next 6 hours. Tate sighed but nodded. 6 hours. Yes, Dr. Coleman said. If everything continues improving, you can see him around 9 o'clock in the morning. Tate looked disappointed, but he understood. Okay. Dr. Coleman gave him a reassuring nod. I know waiting is difficult, especially after what happened tonight, but letting him rest is one of the most helpful things you can do for him right now. Tate sat back down in the waiting room chair, still worried but comforted by one thing. Noah was alive. And for now, that was enough. Nurse Jones and Nurse Baylor were making their rounds when they reached the ICU hallway. They both slowed down. Sitting on the floor outside one of the ICU rooms was a young man with his back against the wall, his head resting against the doorframe. His eyes were closed, but he wasn't asleep. He looked exhausted, like he had been sitting there for hours and had no intention of moving. Neither nurse had ever seen anyone do that before. Jones glanced at Baylor. Is that? Baylor nodded quietly. Outside the ICU room. They looked through the small window in the door and then back at the man sitting outside. He was strikingly handsome, but what caught their attention wasn't his appearance. It was the way he sat there, patient, worried, and completely devoted. That's probably the person they wouldn't let in, Jones whispered. Baylor smiled softly. He was probably told his sweetheart needed rest and visitors weren't allowed. Jones looked at him again. And instead of leaving, he just moved closer. Baylor's expression softened. That's actually really sweet. Jones nodded. Don't you think that's sweet? Baylor watched as the young man quietly looked through the window of the ICU door, just wanting to be near the person he cared about. Yeah, she said softly, it is. Neither nurse disturbed him. Some moments didn't need to be interrupted. Nurse Jones watched the young man sitting outside the ICU room for another moment. She shook her head softly. I've obviously been looking in the wrong place. Nurse Baylor glanced over. What do you mean? Jones gestured subtly toward the door. I've never had a guy do something like that for me. Baylor listened as Jones leaned against the counter. Every boyfriend I've ever had made a big deal when I needed help. They acted like taking care of me was some huge inconvenience. She looked back toward the man sitting quietly outside the room. That man didn't even get to go inside, and instead of leaving, he sat right there so he could be as close as possible. Baylor's expression softened. Jones let out a small, humorless laugh. When I had appendicitis, my boyfriend complained about how much time he had to spend at the hospital. She shook her head. And when I was pregnant. She paused. I had a C-section. 4 hours after giving birth, I was exhausted, in pain, and trying to recover. Baylor looked at her sympathetically. What did he do? Jones sighed. He asked me when I was going to make dinner. Baylor stared at her. 4 hours after a C-section. Jones nodded. Yep. She looked again at the young man outside the ICU room. Meanwhile, this guy is sitting on a hospital floor because someone he cares about needs rest. A small smile crossed her face. Maybe that's what people are supposed to do when they really love someone. Baylor followed her gaze. Maybe. For a moment, neither nurse said anything. The hallway was quiet except for the sounds of the ICU equipment behind the door and the steady breathing of the man who refused to leave. The head RN on duty, Mariah, walked down the ICU hallway and noticed Jones and Baylor standing there, both looking toward the same room. What's going on? Mariah asked. Jones immediately pointed. Look at that Romeo over there. Mariah followed her gaze. Outside the ICU room, Tate was still sitting on the floor, his head resting against the doorframe, refusing to leave Noah's side. Isn't that sweet? Jones whispered. I've never had a guy do something like that for me. Mariah watched for a moment before slowly shaking her head. Me either. She crossed her arms. My 2 ex-husbands were awful, cheaters both of them. Baylor gave her a sympathetic look. Sorry. Mariah shrugged. At least I learned what I didn't want. She looked back toward Tate. But that right there, that's someone who actually cares. Jones smiled. Exactly. Mariah narrowed her eyes slightly. Wait a minute. The other 2 nurses looked at her. What? I know who that is. Jones raised an eyebrow. Who? Mariah lowered her voice. My mother reads all those society columns and gives me her old magazines after she's done with them. She looked back toward the ICU door. That boy is in those columns all the time. Baylor frowned. You're kidding. No. Mariah pointed subtly. That's Tate Blue. The name immediately caught their attention. Jones blinked. Tate Blue. Mariah nodded. The Tate Blue, the Blue family. Baylor looked surprised. The wealthiest family in California. Mariah nodded. Exactly. For a moment, all 3 nurses looked back at Tate. The person sitting on the hospital floor wasn't acting like someone famous or wealthy. He wasn't surrounded by assistants. He wasn't demanding special treatment. He was just a young man sitting outside a hospital room, waiting for someone he cared about to wake up. Jones smiled softly. Funny. What? All those magazines probably talk about his money, his family, and his status. She looked at Tate again. But they never mention this. Mariah nodded. No, they don't. Behind the ICU door, Noah rested quietly. And outside, one of the richest young men in California sat on the floor because leaving wasn't an option. Mariah approached the ICU doorway with a fresh IV bag in her hands, moving quietly so she wouldn't disturb Noah. She didn't expect Tate to react. The moment her hand touched the doorframe, Tate's eyes opened. For a second he looked disoriented, still caught between exhaustion and sleep. Then he saw her. The change was immediate. His entire posture shifted. The tired young man who had been sitting silently outside the room disappeared, replaced by someone fiercely alert. His shoulders tensed and his eyes narrowed as they locked onto Mariah. A low, instinctive snarl escaped him. Not a shout. Not a question. A warning. It was the kind of sound that came from someone who had been pushed past fear and exhaustion into pure protectiveness. Mariah stopped. She had worked in hospitals long enough to deal with angry family members, scared patients, and difficult situations, but the intensity behind Tate's reaction caught her off guard. It wasn't hostility for the sake of being hostile. It was the sound of someone who had spent hours fighting to keep the person behind that door alive and wasn't willing to let anyone near him without knowing exactly why. She instinctively stepped back out of the room. I'm just changing his IV, Mariah said quickly. Tate didn't answer. He just stared at her. It was the Tate Blue legendary scowl, the one people wrote about in society columns and whispered about at events. The look that said, "That better be all you're doing." Mariah held up the IV bag slightly. That's it, just the IV. Tate continued watching her for another moment before finally relaxing by the smallest amount. From the hallway, Jones and Baylor exchanged looks. Jones whispered, "I think she just met the famous blue stare." Baylor nodded. "No." She glanced at Tate. "I think she met the protective version." Inside the room, Tate stayed exactly where he was, eyes still on Mariah until he was certain Noah was safe. Terrence walked down the ICU hallway, expecting to find Tate in the waiting room. Instead, he stopped. His son was sitting on the floor outside Noah's room, his back against the doorframe, his head tilted slightly to the side from exhaustion. For a moment, Terrence didn't say anything. He had seen Tate angry. He had seen Tate stubborn. He had seen Tate refuse to back down. But he had rarely seen him like this. Quiet. Protective. Terrence slowly stepped closer and looked through the small window in the ICU door. Inside, Noah was resting. Tate's eyes opened. The second he realized someone was standing there, his expression changed. His tired face hardened. His jaw tightened. A low warning sound escaped him. A snarl. Terrence froze. It wasn't the anger he expected from his son. It was something deeper, an instinctive reaction from someone who had spent hours terrified that Noah might not wake up. Terrence raised his hand slightly. "I'm just checking if he's doing better." Tate didn't respond. He just stared. The message was clear. Not unless you have a reason to be there. Terrence studied his son's face for a moment. The same son who usually kept everything buried was sitting on a hospital floor, guarding the person he cared about most. Slowly, Terrence stepped back. Snarl, bark, growl. "All right, I can take a hint." He didn't argue. He didn't push. He simply took the hint and walked back down the hallway. As he disappeared around the corner, Terrence couldn't help thinking about what he had just seen. For once, Tate wasn't protecting his reputation. He wasn't protecting the Blue family name. He was protecting Noah. Nurse Jones and Nurse Baylor were back at the front desk when the automatic doors opened. A deliveryman stepped inside carrying one of the largest bouquets either of them had ever seen. Not just a bouquet. A massive arrangement overflowing with bright yellow flowers. The florist followed behind him with a delivery clipboard. "Delivery for Tate Blue," the florist announced. Both nurses immediately looked up. "Tate Blue," Jones repeated. The delivery man nodded. "Yes, ma'am, 100 yellow alstroemeria." Baylor stared at the flowers. 100. The florist carefully adjusted the enormous arrangement. "Yes, ordered specifically." Jones walked closer, admiring the flowers. "Those are beautiful." The florist smiled. "Yellow alstroemeria usually symbolizes many things.